Hello, welcome to the Edwards College New Faculty Series. I'm Eric Hall, Chair of the Department of Theater, and today I have the pleasure of introducing and talking with Dory Sibley, new hire in the Department of Theater. She is going to be, she was hired to be specifically and specialize in the area of voice and speech. And she will also teach acting and physical theater and devised theater and a lot of other things. But we're going to talk to her today about her background, to get to know her a little bit. So please welcome Dory.
Hi, Eric. Everyone.
Hello. So we are, of course, not in the same room, but I don't think that we're in the same country right now. Is that correct?
That's correct. No, I'm still over here in Italy. We are just now, we have been able to start to slowly open up from the COVID because we were months ahead of you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a really interesting summer to slowly open up, see camps opening up again and all of that for the kids. And yeah, so that's where I am. I'm an ocean away.
An ocean away. Well, I sort of got ahead of myself with the first question, and some of our viewers may not know why you're in Italy. So, where are you coming from to join CCU?
I'm in Arezzo, Italy. I've been here for 15 years this August. And I was working at a small study abroad program called the Accademia dell'Arte. We actually have a partnership with the theater department at CCU for the one-year program in physical theater. So yeah, I've been here for 15 years, but before that, I'm an Arkansas girl at heart, and I know that really warms your heart, Eric, as a Missourian yourself.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But I was originally from Fayetteville, Arkansas, and my father worked at the university there. My mother worked in the public schools there and also at the university. And so I grew up in a home of teachers in Northwest Arkansas.
Nice. What drew you to become a university professor? Was it this environment that you were raised in?
It's funny, actually, the environment I was raised in made me not ever want to teach. you know how you rebel a lot sometimes when you're a young person. And both of my parents being teachers, not only did I sort of want to like distance myself from being just like them, because that's kind of what you do generally, but also I watched them struggle a lot. Teaching is not something you go into to just have a great time all the time. Teaching is something that's part of a constantly learning process. And I didn't know if I wanted that struggle. It seemed a lot to me. And my parents were really, really passionate teachers. My father was a linguist, and his master's was in Spanish, and his PhD was in linguistics. And so he was also fluent in Spanish and taught Spanish and linguistics at the University of Arkansas, was the chair of the foreign language department there for many years. My mother is a speech pathologist. So to say I went into the voice and speech world is really funny because, of course, it seems like I came upon that rightly. But I didn't start there. I started singing opera in another lifetime. I was, and still am, sort of, a coloratura soprano. And I sang opera for many, many years. And I felt really, when I left the US, I felt very disempowered, very disillusioned, and without the tools to really do anything about that as an artist. So I was searching for a way to express myself. And I found the Accademia dell'Arte. way back then. Now, way
Mm-hmm.
back then, the academia was only like a year old, maybe. And I joined them and learned there with a cohort of about 18 other students. At that time, the academia was also taking like post-grad students and people that had were starting even in professional careers because they were just getting started. So I kind of had an eclectic cast inside my cohort that I got to learn with and from, you know. But as an opera singer, I jumped into something just like completely different than I'd ever known before, and had to trust everyone around me. I had to trust my ensemble on a really deep level and trust my teachers on a deep level because I had no idea what I was doing. I had no clue. I had no background. I just did it. At that time, you know, we're talking about 2005, 2006. So youngins out there, you won't remember, but the websites back then were not so great. You couldn't really like go out and just figure out immediately what something was about. You had to try it. You couldn't like just read about it. So I just went and I jumped in feet first. My original voice teacher when I was singing opera, Janice Yos, had told me once that you learn more from teaching. You learn more about yourself, like yourself as an artist from teaching, than you will from practicing every single day. And I started teaching private lessons underneath her. And then when I went on to the academia and then decided to get my master's under the mentorship of Kevin Crawford, I started teaching even during my master's program and developing my own method, my own way of approaching first singing and then to voice and speech work. And I really did find that as a teacher, you start to also integrate everything that you're experiencing in the room with another student on a really deep level. And I found it really rewarding. That's my story.
Nice. Thank you for sharing all of that. So is that the vocal body work that you created? Did that turn into your sort of pedagogical ideas through
Yeah.
time, or was it developed as a standalone thing? I know that we talked about it right before we came on.
Yeah. No, I mean, it started as my thesis. My thesis project was expanding vocal possibilities, you bridging the gap between physical theater and actually classical voice. So my thesis project, not just my paper that I wrote, or was about taking Giancarlo Minotti's The Medium and turning it into a physicalized theater piece with the arias and duets still sung. So I would take all of the recitative and I turned that into text. And because it's 20th century opera, so if you're working with people that have never sang classical music before, teaching them recitative in 20th century opera is like, I mean, it's just not going to happen. I'm not that good of a classical music teacher. So, but that wasn't really the point. The point was to take, to kind of break opera a little bit, break the form and then rebuild it and see what happens when you come from a very minimalized world. So we used very little props, but we used each other. So we used a lot of weight sharing and partner acrobatics to start to unlock things in the voice that were holding us back. And so that started it. And then as I continued to move on, it sort of branched out. When I started to do the Fitzmaurice work, I started to understand also how sometimes yoga and bioenergetics and other fields, both from a psychological perspective and a corporal perspective, come together. And so I took all of that, and I started to also create a little branch of acro voice, which is something that when I was teaching at the ADA, when the 1 years were there, that was something they would do with Shakespearean sonnets in their second semester. And they would take those, they would create choreographies and use these choreographies to take these sonnets and make them an entire scene.
So it sounds like there's a lot of, I kind of want to segue a little bit for our general audience away from the idea of you as a voice teacher and focus on how that is a tool that a theater practitioner uses, and what kind of creativity and how, what other things have you done? I mean, I know that devising is a big part of your work, mask work, which doesn't involve the voice at all, is
Yeah,
a
well,
part of it.
so this is, it's really interesting, because when I think of voice work as I do it now, I would say that I think of it as breath work
Mm-hmm.
and expression. And so what's interesting about how we visualize voice work is sometimes we just take it from here up. We say, this is the voice, right? The vocal tract, basically,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the mouth. But the voice starts much lower, right? It starts all the way down at the pelvis and also through the freedom of the legs and the feet. And I started doing Alexander technique. It's been almost 2 decades I've been studying Alexander technique and using it in my practice. And this has everything to do with how the whole self, right? The whole self, no matter what activity you engage in, it's done with your whole self, right? Which also then means everything that you're translating from the outside world, right? Because we look out into the outside world and we're translating that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we're uniquely translating it. And our own unique voices come also from that. So a lot of the work that I do in devising has to do with personal narrative and understanding our own form of expression, starting to understand what we actually want to say and looking inside for that answer instead of looking to the outside to see if we're correct or not correct. So it's basically taking out this idea of someone from the outside tells me whether or not I know myself and know what I want to express. And that to me is voice work.
Okay. Okay. I love that. Sometimes we ask a question and we know the answer, but we need somebody to tell us that it's okay, that that's the answer.
Exactly. It's trying to disengage this reflex for outside approval, this approval reflex that we have, which is built in by our own experiences and societal experiences, but it doesn't need to be that way. And we start to ask ourselves also as voice teachers, we started this conversation a few years ago. A colleague of mine, Supe, wrote an article about these discussions they were having in their circles, in their academic circles, about what kind of world are we training our artists to go into?
Mm-hmm.
Are we training them to go into a world where they say yes to everything because they want that approval? Are we training them to go into a world where they will change the world to what it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, they have to look inside for the answers, because what's happening outside is not the change that we want to see. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's this idea that our deep expression, our voice, is something that we may not have really explored yet.
Mm-hmm.
We may not have really touched into yet. And that sort of well of creativity bleeds out into everything that we do
Mm-hmm.
as artists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I can't remember. You just asked me also
Well,
what
I was
else
talking
I'm
about the
doing, right?
devised work.
Right, of course. Let me go into that.
That was an amazing answer, and now it seems trivial to go ahead and define devised theater for the folks listening who may not know what that means.
I
Yeah, you
mean,
don't have to do
device.
that. They can Google it.
No, thanks. But yeah, Google device theater. No, I think device theater is funny because we think of it in a specific context, and you can say that, but I like to call it self-generated work, right? So you're just creating work of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? I am so incredibly lucky because I have a group of people that I've been working with since we met in 2006 at the Accademia dell'Arte.
Mm-hmm.
And we started our company, Tuzzani Theater Company, 11 years ago this year. And we've been traveling and doing mass theater, physical theater, political theater for 11 years now. And I do want to say this because this is really wonderful and important to know about CCU. Back when we did our first tour, Ken Martin, who was chair at the time, brought Tuzzani in to teach a 3-day workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And to present a common hour. And we just had the best time, and we loved it there. And I remember that experience really well. And actually, when this job came up, I thought, oh, yes, I am going for this, because I remember just absolutely loving my experience there and working with the students at CCU.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And the Tuzzani group also does a type of commedia.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that's a part of your work too? I mean, being in Italy and working in physical theater, that's a form that a lot of people are familiar with and might go, oh yeah.
Yes. So Commedia dell'arte. It's an incredible form of theater. And I want to caution people not to think of commedia as a style of theater, which I think it is often misnamed as a style because it's a form, and forms are malleable. Styles are not. There are definitely people that, like Strehler, who have a specific style. Bozo has a specific style, right, of how they do theater. Marcello Bartoli has a specific style of the commedia. But that's dependent on the director, not dependent on the form. The form is a form.
Mm-hmm.
And so what Tuzzani does is we take that form and we really kind of bend it and twist it and tear it apart and look at it in any way that we can from different perspectives in relationship to the world we're living in now. And the actual experiences we're having now, because that's what commedia was. It was a reflection of what people were experiencing in that moment. And people think of it as only comedy. It's not only comedy. It also had some tragedy, because people were experiencing a lot of tragedy at the time when commedia was quite popular. You're talking about people that were starving to death. And then you had nobility that were living in the high towers. So it's not so far from the world we're living in now. And it is a direct link of socio-political theater. So we as Tutzani take that, right, and we say, it's really interesting, what if Commedia kept going? What if it hadn't died, right? What if it had kept going, if it had all of a sudden shown up in America? It went through some of Europe, but then if it showed up in America, how would have it continued to develop today? And so it's Ali Lambetter, the founder of Tutzani. I co-founded it with her. She is a fantastic mask maker and artist. And so we tend to start with the more traditional masks when we're kind of delving into character. It helps to unlock some improvisation, to understand character in a deeper way. And then we take that and we say, okay, but who is this character and what is this mask? Because it could be different, which is not unlike how all these masks were born in the first place, because it came from Zani, right? Which we all are, Tutti Zani, came from Zani, and then started to build into other masks. And then you have Arlecchino, and then came Brighella, and so it's these people took these masks and they started to do them in a very particular way, and that became a different character.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same exact thing, I think, what we do, but just in a totally different time period.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. So you actually make masks too. You make these masks. You don't order them, or...
Yeah, so we have a set of, I have a set of leather masks that I also use that are the more of like the traditional stock characters.
Mm-hmm.
But those are just the masks that we usually use. We have one show that's much more traditional. It is very gender bendy, but it is very traditional, and taken from more of a traditional Caravaggio. But besides that show, all the other masks are completely made from taking that mask and saying, okay, this is a Capitano, but that's not quite Capitano, that goes somewhere else. Then we take that as an idea and start to build the mask that would be best for that character. I started doing this work with a colleague of mine, Torbjörn Ahlström, who's in Sweden. And it's called Voice in the Mask. And it's basically unlocking character through the resonance of the mask. And this comes back to expression, right? So as soon as we find the resonance that the mask is asking for, then all of a sudden our character actually builds itself, surprisingly. But you have to allow it to do that, right? So it's like taking a step back from like saying, this is going to be what the character is in my brain,
Mm-hmm.
and then presenting that to me is very one-dimensional. That's going to be a very one-dimensional character. Whereas if you put it on, you really experience what is the body, how would this character breathe, how would this resonance be, then all of a sudden you're talking about a three-dimensional character that you can actually step into their spine, right?
Mm.
And become something else.
So the mask then becomes a player in the creation of the character.
Yes.
And sound, it becomes a part of the input.
That's right. That's right.
And when you say resonance, are you talking about how the voice sounds in the mask, or are you talking about something else?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm talking about as I would explain in Voice in the Mask, when you put a mask on your face, especially the Commedia mask, because there's many different types of masks that we can use, and there are different types of masks that I use to try and open up different resonant spaces throughout the face. But in a Commedia mask, a traditional Commedia mask that's made out of leather, it's going to really place a lot of pressure here. Now, what we know is that these are some of our main resonators, right? Here and here. And all of that is just like muffled because you now have pressure there, okay? So what we try to do is we try to then go to the nose right? Put your hand on the nose and you start to hum, finding where is what we call the strada, right? La strada, the street, the
Mm-hmm.
pathway
It's a
of
good
this
movie.
person's voice. I have a pathway of my voice, right? This person through this resonance point would have a different pathway. And this pathway then can be the main point of interest for the resonance. And then you open up around that just like you do in your own voice. So it's not that it just stays in this one place. It's that that's the starting point, and that's where the character is most comfortable, and that's where you're not going to have a lot of strain in the throat, because the mask is helping you to actually project the voice. It's like how speakers work.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the origins of theater in the Greek theater, with the chorus masks were
Exactly.
designed to amplify.
Right.
And you're
Exactly.
talking about turning it into more of a character creation based on the physical appearance of the mask, which is from a character creation standpoint.
Yes, exactly. And I like to look at the appearance of the mask. I like to look specifically at lines and shapes and how those translate in the body. So, and it's amazing. Every time I do this with students, you find out that these masks look like this for a reason. So it comes out with a lot of times the stock character in
Mm-hmm.
some way, shape, or form. There's some sort of resemblance or some sort of like memory of the stock character just lives there.
But it's never, I'm going to make a stock character mask and be that
Yeah.
character. And I think that that might be a lot of people's experience or knowledge of, oh yeah, you're the
Pantaleone.
Arlecchino, so you're the like the wisecracking whatever. But I don't know all of the names. But there's
Yeah.
like the doctor who's big and
Yeah, the Dottore that,
authoritarian, and
yeah, says he knows everything but knows nothing. Yes. I mean, there's there's exactly. So these, to me, this is like our bodies. We have a structure, we have a skeleton, yes? And that structure is what we can rely on, something we can hold on to. We know that that structure exists, right? But then we have all this other stuff on top of our structure. And if you try to use something that is not useful, you're going to have strain. You're going to have uh, the inability to express clearly. And it's the same in the mask. The mask has a structure, and we can follow it. And we can follow the structure of the voice and the resonance through that mask. But if we don't follow the mask and we put something upon it because we say, this is how it should be, or this is how it was, which, yes, by the way, we don't know. It died for too long. We were literally piecing this together from, you know, barely things that are not very tangible. So you're instead putting something that was created on something else, and you're pretending that you knew what that was. Nobody does, really, you know? So isn't it better to just take it and say, okay, what is the mask asking of me? How do we, like, I think this way in theater too, right? And this is what's so beautiful, I think, about the form of commedia, is it's about relationship. And our theater director one time here at the ADA, Nandan Kirko, who I've had like the absolute pleasure to work with for many years, once said something that I think was really profound that she learned from Grotowski, and that was that theater is, there's this person, human character, whatever, this person, human character, and theater is what happens here. It's what exists because these two meet, right? Or with the audience, it exists because of what happens in between. It's like another character, another energy is created because of this relationship.
mm-hmm. That's great.
Yeah.
I guess we're getting close to the end of our interview here, but there's
I think we are.
one more very important question. Hopefully this will be a tradition for all of the future interviews. What is your favorite snack or hobby?
um, my favorite snack is popcorn. It's a real problem. If there's popcorn in the room, I will eat all of it. It
It's
doesn't matter if I'm
delicious.
full or anything. I will eat all of it. My favorite hobby is bicycle riding with my family.
Nice. That's a good one. I like bicycling myself, but popcorn. We'll get you a big
Popcorn.
bowl.
Yeah, thank you. I'm waiting for it.
That's your welcome package.
Great. Thank you
All
so much,
right.
Eric. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you for speaking to me and us, and look forward to working with you very soon.
I am very much looking forward to it.
Well, thank you, Dory Sibley, Department of Theater. I'm Eric Hall, and we'll see you next time.